welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Negotiations between the UK and the EU entered into a critical 48-hour period over the weekend to iron out issues surrounding the new fisheries arrangements. Both sides have less than 2 weeks to the end of the year when the UK will stop following the EU's trading rules. We'll be discussing why these talks have been so difficult and what lies ahead for Britain after the December 31st final deadline. My guest, a foreign policy commentator and Belgian politician, Collins Weke, will be joining us later as the Biden-Harris administration prepares to take over the reins of leadership in the United States on January 20th. You notice how varied nominations for the White House positions have been. You have Native Americans, Indian Americans, more women, and a Nigerian American. My colleague in Washington, Maria Burt, spoke to a former U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, Robin Sanders, about this development and the impact it could have on the American government. That's Diplomatic Channel in a wrap. First, a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles, and we'll be right back. A number of European countries have banned travel from the UK to prevent the spread of a more infectious coronavirus variant. While top health officials say there is no evidence the new variant is more deadly or would react differently to vaccines, it is proving to be up to 70% more transmissible. It has spread quickly in London and southeast England. Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Saturday introduced a new Tier 4 level of restrictions, scrapping a planned relaxation of rules over the Christmas period for millions of people. Countries that have either announced a ban or are planning to include Belgium, Italy, Ireland, even Germany. The European Medicines Agency is convening to evaluate the vaccines made by US company Pfizer and German partner BioNTech. It said its experts meeting was brought forward after the companies had provided more data as requested, and the EU Commission would fast-track its procedures to rule on approval within days. Health Minister Jens Spahn says Germany should start giving coronavirus shots 24 to 72 hours after the BioNTech-Pfizer vaccine gets EU approval and could begin as soon as Christmas. Also, Germany, France, Italy and 5 other European states will coordinate the start of their vaccine campaigns. Rising infection rates and tighter lockdown measures in many European nations have added to the pressure on the EMA to act as quickly as possible and cast a shadow over the Christmas celebrations. And finally, the Covax alliance, which aims to secure fair access to COVID-19 vaccines for poor countries, says it now has agreements in place for nearly 2 billion doses, roughly doubling supply, with the first deliveries due in early 2021. The initiative, co-led by the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, the World Health Organization, and the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, said it aimed to deliver 1.3 billion doses of approved vaccines next year to 92 eligible low and middle-income economies.
We're proud to announce that Covax has secured to access almost 2 billion doses of several promising vaccine candidates. These unprecedented agreements mean that all 190 countries and economies participating in Covax will be able to access vaccines to protect vulnerable groups in their populations during the first half of next year. This is fantastic news and a milestone in global health.
There you go. You want to give me that? Yeah.
New agreements announced on Friday include an advance purchase agreement with AstraZeneca for 170 million doses and a memorandum of understanding for 500 million doses from Johnson & Johnson.
The main message I'd like to make is that our goal of global equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines is alive and well. We've all read reports in the media, some of you are on this call today, that Covax needs to secure more doses or hasn't raised enough money. We still need more doses, and yes, we still need more money, but we have a clear pathway to securing the initial 2 billion doses, and then beyond that, that we need to end the acute stage of this pandemic.
The UK and the EU have been going back and forth on Brexit for nearly 3 years. And now, while they should be tying up loose ends and signing final agreements, it appears Brexit, as Britain envisioned it, might not be happening. While the EU says it understands how important this move is for the UK, it does not want to be rushed into signing a deal on trade.
It has been a tough December of negotiations going back and forth between the EU and the UK. But as both sides approach the end of the year 2020, not much optimism is left about a deal. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's spokesman said on Thursday that it is very likely there will be no agreement unless the bloc changes its position substantially. He is referring to safeguarding $1 trillion worth of trade from tariffs and quotas when the transition period ends on December the 31st.
Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster and Minister for the Cabinet Office.
Even Cabinet Minister Michael Gove said any deal on post-Brexit trade with the European Union, though needing parliamentary approval, still had a less than 50% chance of success.
Our approach is that we will need to know if we have secured an agreement in time to allow Parliament to have its voice and its say and to legislate. And if we don't have time for that, then the clock has run out.
Optimism had been rising that a deal was imminent to keep trade free of tariffs and quotas beyond December the 31st. But a slight hope remains on the EU as European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says it will be very challenging to overcome the big differences that remained. During the week, she told the EU Parliament she could not say if there will be a trade accord with Britain, but that there has been progress in talks and the next few days will be critical. The rest of Europe awaits the outcome of the talks. Truck traffic built up on Wednesday in the highways of the northern French city of Calais, France's main gateway to the United Kingdom, ready for the return of customs formalities on trade. Businesses shifting goods between Britain and the world's largest trading bloc have warned of major disruption to just-in-time supply chains. Meanwhile, trucks heading towards the English port of Dover have been stacked up for around 20 miles since Thursday. From December the 31st, companies in Britain will have to complete full customs declarations and paperwork to move goods in and out of the EU. If companies have not completed the paperwork correctly, up to some 7,000 trucks could go back up from Dover, turning southeast England into a giant truck park.
Haben Sie das Wort zu einleitenden Ausführungen.
As for Britain's neighbours, fingers are crossed a deal will be reached. But according to German Chancellor Angela Merkel, if not, the European Union is prepared for all scenarios. France's President Emmanuel Macron says he wants the best possible relationship with Britain. Both agree everything should be done to reach a deal that will require both sides seeing sense to navigate the uncharted waters of a friendly divorce.
Joining me now is a foreign policy commentator, Collins Weke, to talk some more about the trade negotiations. Mr. Weke, thank you for joining me on Diplomatic Channel.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Amarachi. Thank you for having me.
This issue of trade is supposed to be the last hurdle for Britain and the EU, but it appears that both are not anywhere near the finish line. Why is it harder to come to an agreement?
The major issue on the table that needs to be ironed out is actually rules around fisheries policies, which some people actually find rather funny because fisheries represent less than 1% of, less than 0.1% of EU UK trade volume. Yet it is constituting such nuisance, for want of a better word to use. Now, other little issues, migration, border control, and so on and so forth, were lumped together in something they describe as issues they have not managed to form, to find some sort of, common rules around. We do know that in diplomatic parlance, once, they make reference to such issues, it means that they are probably close, in finding an agreement, but not quite 100%. So in summary, what I can say is that apart from fisheries policy, which appears to be more symbolical than real serious issue, all the other little issues, they appear to be, having a headway, but once there is no deal, there is no deal. So at this moment, there is no deal and they are still talking.
And by December 31st, the UK's participation in the EU single market and the customs union ends. And if no deal is reached between the two before then, the UK would be trading by default under the WTO rules. Now, in practicality, what would that look like? And how would this impact on the UK's trade relations with the EU and other countries outside of the EU?
Having to fall back on the World Trade Organization terms, if no agreement is reached, essentially negates one of the major pillars of Brexit. Now, World Trade Organization, WTO, is an international body. It shows that the sovereignty, which is at the heart of the Brexit motivation, will be taken away because its rules will replace those of the single market, which they wanted to escape, so to speak, to take back control. Now, if there is no deal by the end of December, 31st of December, the UK will leave the single market and customs union and begin trading with the EU on World Trade Organization terms, like you rightly pointed out. So the imposition of tariffs could potentially lead to higher prices in the UK. I mean, the shops would have to see, prices of foodstuff escalate. Well, not really escalate, but at least go up with some margin. What that also means is that the UK, which is already struggling to fight poverty, it will, mean that the purchasing power of a number of people will, be threatened. And that is not something that they are finding, funny. But even in a situation where agreement is found, there will be major changes at the border from the 1st of January, when the new custom checks would have to come in.
The UK is already strengthening ties with some other countries, although it claims that these have always been strong despite Brexit. We have seen them try to rekindle a strengthening of relations with Nigeria and with some other countries such as India. What advantage could there be for countries such as Nigeria in Brexit?
Well, let's just a little bit of background. Theresa May, during her tour of Africa as the Prime Minister, promised to create what she called Global Britain. Global Britain, in her concept, views Africa as a primary trade partner, and I'm actually quoting her words. She went further to pledge, and this actually goes to the heart of the question that you posed. She went further to pledge 4 billion euros in a speech that she delivered in South Africa, according to her, to create jobs for young people in Africa, which is something that Africa has been struggling, including Nigeria, or especially Nigeria, has been struggling with for a long time. So that is an obvious benefit, but I'm coming back to that shortly. Now, she also pledged a fundamental shift, again, I'm quoting her words, in aid, spreading to focus on long-term economic and security challenges rather than short-term poverty reduction. So what that means is that the reallocation of aid facilities for Africa will now be more structured and more structural than it used to be. Now, that's on that part. Now, coming to trade itself, of course, they are looking out for opportunities, outside the EU, which used to be the, closest and biggest trading partner, and trying to expand the horizon to Africa. So manufacturing, export and all of that, Africa will be their new found pride.
We'll take a short break. Our conversation with Mr. Collins Weke continues. Join us again. Though Britain has triggered the Article 50, leading to its exit from the EU, it certainly does not want to crash out of the EU, as we've seen with all the negotiations that have been taking place. The EU is also preparing for life after Brexit. At this point, almost everything is up in the air: migration, trade, customs, and everything. Can the UK make it back into the EU, if Brexit really doesn't work out?
Wow. It is most improbable. Some ideas that some people have played with Amarachi in recent past, the pro-Brexit people, is actually the notion of Britain rejoining the EU in due course. I think they have come to a stage now where either they go through with it with a deal, or they crash out without a deal. Now, Brexit, come to think of it, was born out of the notion of sovereignty.
Yeah.
Remember, the Brexit mantra was take back control of our borders.
Mm-hmm.
Now, traditionally, sovereignty referred to ability, of a state to make decisions about events within its borders without external, inferences. Globalization has, however, progressively robbed individual states in isolation of control over their economic affairs. Global manufacturing, for instance, and commerce increasingly depend on the cooperation of trading partners to ensure goods pass across borders and are accepted for sale in foreign markets. From this perspective, you can see that free trade agreements and institutions such as the EU single market do not reflect a loss, but indeed a pooling of sovereignty. So control is extended beyond the borders of the state. The vision, explains why the UK negotiators reject any compulsory mechanism for conflict resolution, whether in the form of non-regressive clauses or via entities outside Parliament's control. For example, the Court of Justice. So you can see that in the end, it's looking like Britain wants to eat its cake yet have it, because the sovereignty that they are talking about, they are going to have it by exiting the EU through Brexit. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, they cannot escape international control based, for example, on the question you previously asked about trading under World Trade Agreement terms. So it's I think in the end, British people will look at this whole exercise as a joke that went, terribly wrong.
Thanks again, Collins Weke, for joining us on the program and sharing your thoughts and your analysis. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Let's turn to the United States. President-elect Joe Biden has been on his toes preparing to hit the ground running come January 20th, when he would be inaugurated. This has been an election like none other, and a checkered transition, leaving him very little time to prepare. No matter, picking his cabinet has been top priority for him, as has been making some very interesting historic choices, including nominating Nigerian-American Adewale Adeyemo. The 39-year-old economic and political advisor once served as the first president of the Obama Foundation. He's been picked for the United States Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. My colleague Maria Bird spoke to former U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria, Robin Sanders, on the future of U.S.-Africa relations.
Ambassador Sanders, thank you so much for joining us. We know we had a great conversation a few weeks ago when the Biden-Harris administration first started talking about who were going to be their picks. And we now know there are several picks that they have that are related to the Africa foreign policy area. Can you tell us a little bit more about these key appointments that President-elect Biden has made?
Thank you again for having me on, Maria. Yeah, I think that on the foreign policy side, the picks thus far, and I think, as you know, they all have to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate, their nominees at this point, have been really fantastic. You have Tony Blinken, who I know from my NSC days. I was Africa director at the NSC when he was there. We worked on the Clinton trip together, his Africa trip. So he's fantastic. He was Deputy Secretary of State, the number 2 slot 3 years ago. So he's coming back in with pretty not only accurate knowledge, but sort of a baseline of where things are and what needs to be fixed. And so I think that's wonderful for the department. And I know that the employees of the department are really thrilled with that. Next, of course, on the foreign policy side, you have Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, someone that I know quite well. She was Assistant Secretary of State for Africa. And I think the more so that I really want to tease out on her is I believe she is the first African-American female career diplomat, and I stress the career diplomat aspect, that's been given a cabinet nomination. So I think that is truly unique in addition to the skill set that she brings to the table as well as her knowledge about Africa. And then you have Jake Sullivan, who is going to be at the NSC. And what I like about that is both Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, they know each other very, very well. And that helps a lot in terms of making foreign policy decisions because you won't have that tension that sometimes exists between the State Department and the National Security Council, because you have 2 people who have worked together for many years, who know each other well, including with Linda. I think we're going to have a completely different mindset for our global engagement, but particularly for our engagement in Africa, since so many Africa hands will be in the administration.
Ambassador Sanders, as you just said, there's so many Africa hands that are in the administration, but we also know there are those that are of Nigerian descent that aren't necessarily in the foreign policy area. The Deputy Secretary of Treasury, he is of Nigerian descent. Tell us a little bit more about what this means, the first African-American male to have this position.
I think the message from the Biden administration, and we can see that across the spectrum with the nominees, is diversity with a big D. When I say diversity with a big D, that includes the diaspora, that includes inclusion, that includes equality, and that includes gender. And I think that what Wally represents is really on 2 fronts. Not only, I believe he is the first person of color to be Deputy Treasury Secretary, but he represents not only the African American and African diaspora altogether. And I think that that's such an important thing to underscore. I think clearly African Americans and the African diaspora here in the United States played a big role in supporting the president-elect for this upcoming term. And so I think that having someone not only of the diaspora, but he's qualified. He's qualified. He knows the economic portfolio very well. He was previously, I believe, the president of the Obama Foundation most recently. So he comes with a lot of experience. He knows the other players. And I think it's a great thing, not only for America in general, but certainly for the diaspora aspect of what Biden is doing.
Now, we know that those of African descent are throughout the administration with appointments, and we're expecting to see even more diversity come into play in the coming weeks. But what is this really telling us about the Africa policy and the U.S.-Africa relations that will be a part of the Biden-Harris administration? What are we seeing now? Anything different than a few weeks ago?
I think so. I think that it's being further underscored that people that have previous skill sets, that have previous knowledge of not only the globe, but a particular region are coming back into the administration. And having that expertise gives you a more balanced policy because you know the country, or the continent in this particular case, You know the players, the African leaders, both those who are democratic and those who are not, and you have a better balance in order to engage. I think we'll see Africa being more considered as a strategic partner as opposed to kind of a piecemeal approach per country.
Well, Ambassador Sanders, as always, we appreciate your time. We appreciate all of your work. And we just look forward to the future of U.S.-Africa relations. Thank you again for joining us.
Always my pleasure, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is where we end the program this week. I'm glad you could join us. Remember, COVID-19 is real. So is protection against the deadly virus. Stay safe, everyone. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.